Guys, what's up? This is Stock Retail coming back here today to share a little bit about the movie industry outlook, where we are, and a look ahead. If you're kind of new to discovering me on YouTube, I know I've just recently popped up there. Take a look at Twitter. You'll see I've been around for kind of the whole 2 years of the squeeze, um, and a lot of people know me there. And one of the things you'll see about me, or I can just tell you now here, I'm really into education, teaching myself, teaching others. And one of the things I love about the ape movement is we all bring our own unique inputs, perspectives, and skills, and help each other. And I think that's what's different about apes is our desire is to win together, and not sort of on top of each other. At least that's my desire. So one of the reasons I want to go through this today is when you understand what's going to happen to the future of a business, then you understand the value of your stock today outside of whatever happens with the ticker price. You understand where the business is going and where that stock should be headed, and you're sort of immune to FUD at that point. So I just have spent a lot of time looking at the numbers over the last 2 years. I've told some of you I kind of have a background in business forecasting, led some teams forecasting some pretty large business. And one thing I'll just continue to say every time I share numbers is there's a concept in forecasting that if you have a forecast, it's wrong. So as I share anything here today, please understand it's a forecast, it's a forward-looking view, and you'll have to just kind of question for yourself, what you agree with, what you disagree with. But also I'm going to share a lot of fun information. We're going to talk about the actual movies coming and how those are exciting and what that means for AMC. So let's just dive in first to see, just to help you kind of be able to go check for yourself what's coming. One of the places I go is movieinsider.com, and if you just look there, you can kind of see every single movie for all of 2023, every single movie for all of 2024. I've got those all in my own little spreadsheet now where I do my forecasts. And you can kind of figure out too, even looking at the dates. So for instance, I'm showing you here when Guardians 3 comes out or when Fast X comes out. And then like, let's say those were towards the end of a quarter, which, like say the end of June or something would be towards the end of Q2. Then you can kind of start to think through as well what part of the revenue is in the quarter the movie comes out, what part of the revenue is in the next quarter. So that's all stuff I do. I'll probably do another video soon to share my in-depth forecast. You can go back and find some old forecast videos of mine, but one thing is they're a little too long, and then the other is, they're a little older now. So I've learned things. That's the other thing about forecasting. You learn as you go, you revise your forecast with new information. And so, but just so you know, as I share these numbers with you, I'm thinking through what revenue actually lands in a quarter, what revenue spills over to the next quarter. Avatar right now is a great example of that, right? Like it released in Q4 of 2022, but it's still going to be a big movie here in Q1 of 23, which is great for us. So go to movieinsider.com. You can see all the movies coming out. It includes even the ones in streaming if you're ever curious. Like you can see the top of this screen shows one in Netflix. And then the other thing I'll do sometimes, if it's a franchise, I'll go over to Box Office Mojo. And a lot of you are probably familiar with that. Some of us, there's a lot of different apes who kind of will post the running revenue numbers. But besides the sort of total box office, you can go and actually search up titles. And then so you can see here I'm showing like the first Guardians. And you can go, okay, well, the first Guardians did $333 million domestically. That was back in 2014. So you can kind of think through, okay, like you could go look at Guardians 2, see how that did, and then think through, well, ticket prices are a little higher now, and so what's, my forecast for Guardians 3. So just tiny bit of insight on kind of what I'm about to share with you, that I've gone through and looked at every movie being released by date. I've thought through how big is that movie. Some I'm going to get really right, some I'm going to get wrong. Just for perspective, the last 2 quarters as a whole, I think Q3, my forecast as a whole domestic box office was about 97% accurate, so that was pretty good. This last quarter, I was a little farther off. There were a couple disappointments. I think I was at 95% accuracy. But 95% accuracy still meant I was off by like $100 million. We're talking really big numbers here. So I'll kind of share that too. Just I'm big on being transparent. The other thing you can see, the note at the bottom right here is IMDb and some other sites will also have their own forecasts. So sometimes I've used that in the past. Like I was using their forecast for, say, a movie like Avatar. How big did they think it would be? And then I'm deciding for myself, do I sort of think I should flex up or flex down from what other people think? Okay, so without further ado, let's just get to the 2023 top movies. And this is what we should be excited about. Some of you have seen this before. I've posted this on Twitter and one of those long YouTube videos. I'll be a little quicker today, I promise. So just look at this list. I already mentioned Avatar. Of course, it was released last year, but I'm calling it one of the bigger movies of this year because I still think it will do anywhere from 180 to say even $300 million this quarter domestically. I've also shared in other videos the reason I'm speaking about domestic box office. First off, it's just a little more readily available to track. And then second, I've actually tracked, gosh, I think I have like 12 quarters of history now of like every single number from the earnings reports kind of in a local spreadsheet of mine. And I've kind of figured out how I can translate domestic box office into what I think AMC's global revenues are. It's not perfect, but I've kind of got it down fairly well. And so the reason I'm talking domestic box office, if you're an overseas ape, especially, just our teammates who like say attend Odeon or something like that, I'm not forgetting you. I'm actually using those in other numbers I have where I forecast the total business for AMC and total attendance and concessions and all of that. But it just helps me to talk in terms of domestic box office because it's something that's easily tracked. So just whenever I say domestic, just think globally as well too. Obviously, these are movies that are doing well globally. Avatar, in fact, is doing bigger internationally than it is in the U.S., so that's been fantastic. So you can just see my view of what the top 12 movies are of 2023, but then actually I've got a whole list here at the bottom. I've seen some fun, sort of healthy, fun discussions on whether Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to beat Mario or whether Mario will beat Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So sorry to all you Spidey fans. I happen to think Mario's going to be huge. In some ways, I'm hoping that's going to be a little like Minions. We had that craze with all the people dressing up and showing up at the movie. And then I just think Mario, to be honest, we've got decades and decades. Gosh, it came out when I was a kid, so I'm aging myself a little bit. But my kids are way into it. I've got one kid who even watches tons of YouTubes of just Mario content. So I have a feeling that's going to be pretty big. I'm excited about that one. You can see Guardians 3, Indiana Jones, Mission Impossible. Geez, if Tom Cruise didn't nail it with Maverick, and then you guys have all seen the thing of him jumping off the mountain with the motorcycle. I just have a feeling he's got some buzz right now, and that may be pretty big. And then, Wonka, like, look at the industry forecast for that, not just my forecast, and then even look at kind of the franchise. I think that's going to be pretty big. So you can kind of see here. And the real point is, look at the top there. So 2023 versus 2022. If you look at, say, movies that do $200 million and up, so let's call those kind of blockbusters, I think that we're having a lot more in 2023. You can see kind of pretty big growth, 44% growth versus 2022. So that's a big deal. And then let's look at 2024. So versus 2022, we've actually basically doubled how many of those movies there are. So the point is, from 2022 that we just finished, movies got a lot better. It was big growth. But you can see Adam even tweeted recently it was still pretty well below pre-pandemic. 2023, let me go back, we get a lot bigger. And the reason I'm focused on those blockbusters, I think, it's probably partly obvious because of the revenue piece, but also just kind of drives traffic. And so obviously traffic means selling more concessions. And then I think there's even some spillover. Someone comes for a blockbuster, maybe they see signage or a preview for an indie film or something, and they might say, hey, I'm interested, and I'll come see that too. So these sort of big tent poles that drive traffic kind of help the whole industry lift. So it's a big deal. So then in 2022, we have even a lot more. And I'll show you the bigger list at the bottom here. You can even see I've kind of hidden one for a drum roll in a minute. We get a new Spider-Man movie. You all know how big the last Spider-Man was. It was huge. Don't sleep on sort of Disney live action. You see here we've got Snow White. We've got another Lion King movie. I mentioned at the beginning of this how you can go look at Box Office Mojo and look at sort of the history of franchises. So take a look at some Disney live action movies and how huge those were. And actually in 2023, I didn't even highlight Little Mermaid. I think that's going to be really big too. So we've got some real big movies coming. Mad Max, has a new one. I'm pretty excited for that, to be honest. I thought the last one was pretty artistic and kind of had quite the message in it. And then look, we have more Avatar coming. And by the way, if you didn't know, there's yet another one after this. I don't remember now if that's 2025 or 2026, but so Avatar is going to be rolling for a while and helping pad our numbers for the stunk. Deadpool 3, you may have seen Hugh Jackman's going to be in that, so that's going to be really big. And then yet another Mission Impossible, and of course you've got Marvel continuing to roll. So by 2024, it starts to really look like the movie industry is getting bigger. And I'm going to show you the full numbers here in a minute, but I just wanted you to see a little taste of what's behind the numbers. And then we have a movie for us. So we've got in 2024 Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'm super excited about that. It was, I don't know, maybe just 6 months ago, I was kind of showing my oldest child all the Planet of the Apes movies. That was kind of fun. So we get one coming for us. You know, I didn't even highlight, sorry for the back and forth for a minute. In 2023, of course, we have like the Transformers movie. I'm pretty excited about that. If you didn't see that preview, check that out and see how that may or may not be related to us. That's pretty exciting. And you can kind of maybe pause this and check this whole list of all the movies I didn't even highlight down here. Same thing on 2024. There's a lot. As I mentioned, I kind of look at how revenue spills over from one quarter to another. So for instance, I'm not showing Aquaman on here. It's in 2024, but it's pretty late in the year. And so I'm saying a lot of that revenue kind of spills from, I think that was from the prior year. And then same thing here with Sonic, like Sonic 3. Sonic 2, if you didn't know, was actually really big. So I think for us stockholders, that's exciting to see another Sonic. But you can see it releases December 20th of 2024 and it spills out to 2025. So some of these as well then that I haven't shown, you know, may be even bigger and could maybe change what's on the list here. So I want to talk about what does that then translate into the forecast so that you understand. And I'm going to even bring this all the way back here in a minute to the total box office on kind of some other slides. So hang in there. So first off, 2023 versus 2024, if you look at movies more than $100 million, it's basically a 56% increase. So you can see there were 18 in 2022, and there are 28 of those I'm forecasting in 2023. So we have a lot more big movies. Black Adam would be an example of one kind of in this range. It didn't hit 200 million, or in this slide I'm showing you movies that get to 250. Black Adam was, I think, about 168 million domestically. So imagine now having 10 more of those that size in 2023 versus 2022. That's a big deal. And then if you look at 2024, we stay about flat to 2023 on that level, but that still means far more than 2022. But let's look at the really big ones. So if you look at more than $250 million movies, we get 3 more, but that's a full third growth. So we only had 9 in 2022. We get 3 more, we get to 12 in 2023 by my forecast, and then in 2024 we get another 2 over and above that. So start to get some pretty big growth. Then I thought, you know, let's just look at the top 30 movies. That drives a pretty healthy amount of the business. You can see in 2022, that was about $5.9 billion of the total. And then in 2023, you can see the top 30 movies, we increase by 11%, get to about $6.5 billion. And then in 2024, just the top 30 movies, I think, will be as big as the entire business of 2022. That's kind of worth saying out loud again. In 2024, just the top 30 movies would be the size of the entire box office from the year we just finished. So you tell me if you think there's pretty big growth coming. And then let's look at that just by quarter. So you can see I've been tracking this over time. Sharp eyes will catch this chart is kind of scaled. You can see it starts at 1.2 billion here. And I've actually got all the way back to 2018. I'm just showing you kind of a slice here. So from Q3 of 21 to now, and if you look until Q4 of 2022, so I'm kind of hovering over that. That's what we just finished. And so you can see we had a couple of big quarters. You know, we had Spider-Man over here, and then we had, you know, Maverick and some other big stuff in Q2. And then you can see the last 2 quarters we've dropped off a bit, right? So we just finished Q4 2022, and that was a bit of a drop. But let's also just think about where we're going. So Q1, I am forecasting we're still dropping a little bit, but keep in mind, look at Q1 versus last year. So year over year is always a good comparison. And Adam had told us last year too, he warned, Q1 is kind of almost always the lightest quarter of the year. And that's holding true this year. But that doesn't make me nervous because look at the year over year. It's huge. So we're starting to get to a place where we feel like this is a down quarter, but in fact, it's well above a lot of history. If I was to go back here too, obviously it's way over all the 2020. So really great to see that. Just what you want to see is continued growth, right? Are we going in the right direction? And so Q1 23 In fact, I know Megan is coming out here in a week or so. Avatar is just rolling. So far, we're tracking actually to beat my forecast, by the way. So what I'm showing you here on this slide for Q1, obviously it's really early, but there's a couple movies like Avatar and Puss in Boots and some others that are holding up stronger than I had forecasted. So that's a nice positive sign. But geez, look at what's coming next. So the next 3 quarters, all 3 are basically on track to be at, above, or near kind of our biggest post-COVID quarters ever. So you're about to see a couple of records get hit. Q2 rolls along and we get a new record. Looks like we're about 2.4 billion by my forecast domestically. But then, geez, look at Q3. We get up to 2.6, which that starts to be kind of pre-COVID levels. And if you look at another video of mine, just look up one that's kind of about AMC post-COVID versus pre-COVID. I'm actually suggesting AMC's overall business model is better post-COVID than pre-COVID. And maybe I'll do a newer video to kind of hit that sometime, but take a look sometime. So if the box office revenues start to get near pre-COVID levels, but AMC's overall business model is actually better than pre-COVID, you start to get some multiplying effects. So I'm actually forecasting potential profits for AMC in Q2 and almost certain profits in Q3. Again, remember that's a forecast. I can be wrong, and Adam and team will know a lot about sort of internal finances that I don't know, and I could have the timing of some expenses wrong or things like that. But at least this domestic box office, I can be pretty confident I'm going to be close. I told you the last 2 quarters, I was 97% and 95% accurate on those 2. So if that gives you any confidence in this forecast in the future, and like I said, I showed you the movies it's based on. It's based on actual movies and when they're releasing and industry forecasts. And the reason I wanted to show you this is, as we go through these next 3 months, it may feel like, okay, we dipped. But remember, Q1 is always a dip. Look at year over year, how huge growth that is, and then look at what the next couple quarters are coming. And keep in mind, once big money starts understanding that movies are indeed recovering, like if I was to show this slide out through 2024, in fact, let's get there in a minute actually. But if I was to show this slide out through 2024, you would see it gets even much bigger. And so it's my perspective that we're almost through sort of, I'll call it the dark ages of our hodl experience. I can't promise that, and I'm just speaking on fundamentals. I'm not talking about stock market corruption and naked shorting and counterfeit shares and all that. I'm just talking about fundamentals here for a minute. But you can see we've just come through kind of a 9-month period of sort of coming down a little bit on overall revenues, and we're about to jump. And again, if I showed you 2024, we would keep jumping. And so I think we're about to go into, I don't know, call it a 15-month to 2-year expansion. Just steady growth. And I'll show that here. So I've got another view here that's not quarter by quarter. This is what I call a rolling year. So this is a rolling 4 quarters. We're just take the most recent 4 quarters and say, all right, what if that was a box office year? And so you can see here's the one that ended Q2, Q3, Q4 that we just ended. So that's that dip. So you can see we kind of did dip because year over year, we didn't have Spider-Man this time in Q4. We had Avatar, but it was, way at the end, and Avatar's just having way better legs than Spider-Man. Didn't open up as fast. So that was kind of the issue. But then look, from here on, 1, 2, 3, the next 4 quarters in a row, I'm showing if you were to look at a rolling year, we're going to grow up, way up, way up. And then if I was to keep going out through 2024, you're going to see this thing. We're just kind of up and to the right for a long time now. And so part of the thesis has always been, when Hollywood starts cranking out more movies, the industry will improve. And if AMC has been taking steps to make itself healthier and prepare itself for those movies coming, then it's going to turn profitable. That's my thesis. And I show that, like I said, in another video, because I can show you ticket prices per person are higher post-COVID. Rent is lower post-COVID. Depreciation as a percent is lower post-COVID. The amount of money AMC gives back to studios is lower post-COVID. Spending on food and beverage per person is way higher post-COVID. So I can kind of show you on every single sort of underlying fundamental sort of their financials, it's better now than it was then. Also, they have, I showed you in another video, they've got the Saudi Arabia licensing deal. So there's movie theaters in Saudi Arabia that are writing a check to AMC to just use AMC's name. They didn't have that pre-COVID. And so as the movies come back, the industry improves and AMC starts to turn profitable. And you can see that's coming. And I'm basing that specifically on the movies that are listed. And you can go check me on that. So then full year views. Obviously, 2021, we were still barely coming out of sort of lockdowns. 2022, we just finished. So great growth, right? Huge growth, but still not to the level of profitability. And that's fine. I mean, we're holding for the future. So I'm forecasting FY23 or calendar year 23 of nearly 9 billion, and then calendar year 24 of nearly 10 billion. And so just steady growth that we see going on. So things I haven't even discussed here, Hycroft, what happens if they start pulling metals out of the earth and showing their own profits? I'm looking out to 2024 here. There's certainly time for them to start doing that. The rollout of popcorn is coming soon. The credit card that's rolling out, the Zoom meetings, we haven't started seeing revenue from that. The fact that they've added more new properties, I've discussed that in a couple videos too. So the Boston ArcLight, they just added, that's not even open yet. So what happens if you have more properties and now more movies come and you're prepared to actually increase your revenue basically in two ways, right? So there's more movies, so all your properties you had are now making more money, but you've also added more properties to bring in more revenue too. It's kind of like increasing volume, right? You're selling more of your widgets. Whatever business you're in, if you increase volume, you can increase revenues and you can increase profits. Saudi Arabia, I mentioned already, but also they just opened up, I don't remember how many, but I know it was at least one and maybe more, new IMAX theaters. And again, those are paying royalties to AMC. So AMC doesn't own those properties, but they basically get a check for use of the name. So more checks is more revenue and stonks go up, right? So any future mergers and acquisitions, I haven't discussed that. And then just the fact that he's continued to reduce debt, which is reducing interest payments as well. So a lot to like. Let me go back. Even just let's look at 2023. Here's the movies coming. I'm pretty dang excited. Let's go.